Hey, it's Mila Miyabata, E2 Engineer 1, coming to you from the engine room. And it's very strange I'm coming to you from the engine room today, because typically when I do these nuts and bolts episodes, I do them when I'm out and about. They're random thoughts that come to me, and I switch on the camera and I relay them. But the topic of this episode of Nuts and Bolts is so important that I thought, the engine room wouldn't be such a bad place to do it from, and it would be very representative of E2 generally. And so there we are. Now I'm sitting under a very bright light, so occasionally you'll see me use my handkerchief to wipe my face, because I don't intend to sit here sweating. And I am making a presentation to you, so I've got that at the top of my mind. So you hear us talk about socio-economic innovation. Sounds very technical. It's actually about people in both its constituent parts. It's all about people. Economy and economic activity, if you actually look at its definition, is the availability, access to, utilisation of resource. And much of that is, if not all of it, is to do with how humans either are or interact with the resources. And the socio aspect is quite clearly the impact on the social structure and nature of society. From and as a result of the economic activity and the interplay between the two. So with people being the underlying and principal factors in our science, that's where I focus. That's what I'm most interested in. I'm interested in human behaviour, why and how people do what they do. Has always been massively interesting to me, and it's why I've found myself in this realm of activity doing what I'm doing, with the mission to somehow impact upon what people do, so that the social structure and society starts to really improve in line with what people are and can be, and how I've experienced people to be, and the results of people who are fully empowered and able, and the impact I've witnessed that they can make. And obviously the issue that I'm addressing is the wider dissemination of not only the culture, which obviously stems from thoughts and behaviour, or is the composite of thoughts and behaviour, but the access to the tools, community, and the general culture that emerges, and the cultural elements that emerge from people who are consciously shifting culture in a direction whereby there is benefit to be had from adopting new ways. And obviously this is a very, very personal thing, and the degree to which you integrate, utilise things are very, very personal, and you customise them. But a very, very simple example of it is something like Google. The last 20 years, it wasn't there. Growing up, there was no Google. There are other means of trying to find information, and they had their limits. And you were always wholly reliant on human beings and human networks, and if you're lucky enough to be connected, their value. But the reason for making that assertion is the issue of adoption being a very, very personal thing. And so again, in line with the topic of this episode, I've been using a term more and more on social, and it's appearing in our graphic content, and I wrote a blog post about it. And I think if you go to www.e2foundation.co.uk / or hyphen what is E2, you can read a paragraph there titled "It's All About You," and that is the title and subject matter of this episode. So the decision to kind of adhere to that and use that term, that strapline, and its meaning arose out of what we do, which is to speak to other human beings, and that remains centre of everything that's our operations are about and our social mission is about. The enterprise engine, digital tools, components that we introduce for whether they're technological or socio-cultural are what they are. They're designed for people to tap into, plug into and utilise for the enhancement of people. They're actually powered by people. So these conversations with corporates, individuals, largely entrepreneurs, innovators, whether they're making products or, as I say, designing social systems, cultural additions, some within corporate, some ex-corporate, public sector, social enterprises and the like. And obviously the subject matter that we're investigating and tend to debate when we're hosting these discussions is obviously our socio-economic mission and what people think and feel about things. So we're always trying to ascertain a truth, and we're very very focused in how we go about that. So there's nowhere really to hide. It's not that we raid people and interrogate them, but we really do try to get to a truth. And what we find arises out of these conversations, when you dig and you ask the whys, and also when you share, is the two factors that emerge and are the most common and continue to come to the fore. We find are the issue or the topics of power and responsibility. Power and responsibility are the factors that underlie this whole area of human behaviour within a social context, and how and why people interact with society and what they believe is possible through and within society. So, and it's the degree to which you apply, utilise, subscribe to the use of, seed any of those two factors, which fundamentally shape your existence. Now, the background to why you operate or adopt the level of use of these factors centers on belief. Okay, but it's what you actually believe is possible and can happen within any sphere of life. Now, belief is extremely powerful. It's what makes you get up and do it. Almost everything you do, if not everything you do, is centered on the actual belief that there is that A equals B equals C. Now, the thing about beliefs is, for all their benefits and that power I talk about, that's enshrined within belief. The sad thing about it also is that much of what we believe essentially is implanted. Okay, we don't actually get time from the very earliest time to actually sit down and think about what we believe and why. And sometimes you get very jarring experiences in life where at an instinctive level things happen to you which shake you to the core and embed a belief within you, and can almost, in such circumstances, it's almost unshakable to have that belief dispelled. He who feels it knows it is the common description of those realities. But even then, even those beliefs that are embedded at that point aren't necessarily 100% concrete in their actuality, but they do and are to you at that point. So belief, if you have been, and many of the people who share their beliefs with you, shape your life with their beliefs that become yours, as they do through repetitious behaviour. They have your best interest at heart, and they basically are sharing with you what they believe is the best way to approach and go through life. But many of the times these people, if the majority of the time, were in exactly the same way you are, were essentially downloaded with this information And depending on what your perspective or their positions and circumstances are, these beliefs came from there. And that's why you constantly see the same belief resurfacing in behaviour and culture, because it's essentially just a meme that gets passed on. And it's really quite a fundamental thing in life, because these beliefs shape your actions. They shape your actions and your decisions at a macro level. The things you are going to do, the experiences you're going to have, the people you're going to come across, the opportunities that are going to come your way and aren't, and the circumstances you're going to find yourself in. And I always think that the reality of that is actually quite shocking, based on a thought, and it really is just a thought. So, what am I advocating? What I'm really saying is, with the social mission that we have here, being one about people and fundamentally the empowerment of people, really to see the paradigm shift in social progress, which is essentially a widely shared belief set and thought process and associated operating modus, the status quo. To see the shift towards one where there is a wider degree, and a far wider degree of mass social benefit to the way that societies operate, actually starts on an individual level. Okay, it starts on a personal level. It's not something that can be dropped from on high, and that's exactly the mentality and the view on this type of progress that we really must dispel. So how do you go about shifting beliefs? And there's a whole science. We're talking about quite deep psychological stuff here, and you can go and get counselling and so on and so forth. But there's actually a very simple process, and it starts with, I think, sitting down. Firstly, on your own. You can share the process with others but I think on your own, it's very good to start to write your own personal operating code. If you see yourself as like a kind of computer that's been programmed, these beliefs and behaviours, so much of it has been programmed. It's come through those mass media channels that we grew up and were conditioned by, through loved ones, through social conditioning. We just accept it. If you see yourself as a computer with an operating system, and you decide that what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an audit on this operating system and actually sit down and ask myself whether these things I've heard, things that come from various isms, things that have come from, as I say, family, friends, social conditioning, through the TV. It's what it's like when you're a kid and you hear slang and you start using it, and there's a certain group you associate. It's these associations, and you really need to sit down and ask why, and go deep on it, and go to places that might be quite slightly uncomfortable and are certainly unusual. The idea, the purpose of that process, this process, is to bring you to a point where you're now writing your own code. You write your own code about your own beliefs, and it allows you to revisit old beliefs, rub out the ones that aren't relevant. Sometimes you can finesse them more, polish them up, keep the good bits, the things that actually make sense. But what you're really learning in the process is that you have an extremely powerful tool at your disposal, i.e. you, your brain, your heart, and your general makeup as a being of immense power by its innate nature. And it allows you to basically determine and make decisions on anything in life. Okay, and so now the thing about this process is when you start doing it, it can be quite daunting. It can be quite daunting because, especially when there's no real pressure to do it, but it can be quite daunting because you find yourself in a sort of an abyss to a degree. Because everything familiar is kind of like falling away. You can obviously go back to it, it's like holding on to the side. You can You go back to what you know, you're comfortable, but you'll feel yourself going back, and you'll know that you're going backwards to something that's just familiar and nothing more. But very rapidly, as you start the process of applying thought to things and why you're doing it, and realizing that you can restructure almost anything in life based on a new set of beliefs and the activities that go around them. And obviously you get into that groove of thinking about, well, I can actually do this. You move from the apprehension, you move on, you move to a state of feeling, oh, this is actually good, I can do this. It's like riding a bike for the first time. It's like doing anything. You can start feeling the motion, you understand how it's all going to fit together. And you can start to do this it becomes like putting Lego bricks together. It gets easier and easier. So you've moved from say apprehension to a sense of realization that I'm an able and enabled person. That rapidly moves on to feeling and you actually being and embodying being a very powerful person, because now there are no limits on what you can do. Now obviously we're in the technological age, and for me the magic of the age is these technological tools which are being designed to facilitate almost any facet of life. There are tools that are being built. There are groups in places like New Zealand and other hubs of real cutting-edge socio-economic activity who are building platforms and tools to allow people to do things. For example, the procurement of services that would have been done by a local council or a statutory body. The community can actually do these things. Community consultations if they want to build a bridge or a motorway extension. These things can be done. They're at your fingertips to do. Now, it's all very well these things being available, but if the background culture, the human beings, aren't moving in the same direction as the technology, it's almost pointless. And the only reason that there's going to be a shift or a move towards people realising we can do this is when the individual themselves, there is no other way for that person to do it. That this is how I live my life. I am an empowered individual who takes extreme responsibility for what I do. And these are the tools I use to do it. So that term I've just used there, extreme responsibility, I love it because it stems from this process, I say, where you start to see yourself and understand yourself as an empowered individual, and you realise that this is what it fundamentally comes down to. I'm going to take responsibility for every aspect of my life, and even areas I haven't even thought of. And so then the next thought, the next logical step is, how do I do it? What are the practical means by which I do it? Now that person meets this technology or this other group of people who now have this model for doing anything. That reality is I would say, the vision that our social mission is based on, where people en masse understand themselves as people who can do anything, and the means by which to do it using social collectivity and collectivism can and do it. And there's no reason, there's no authority, there's no other factors that can stop that happening. That shift, that paradigm shift, is what E2's social mission is about. Our platform, the enterprise engine, is being designed for the utilisation by people who are in that way of thinking, and who plug into a tool that has been designed for who and how they are with respect to understanding themselves as units of value, empowered people, enterprising people who can now tap into the tools that allow them to enact who and how they are. It's as simple as that. That's what the enterprise engine is, and will continue to be designed to facilitate. So, as I say, the tools are there and the actions are there, but it is they could be lovely, shiny new tools, and fancy as widgets you like, but the real innovation is the iterations in the mass social consciousness and behaviour. And like I say, it really does come down to very small personal steps where you just stop looking at external factors as the things that shape your life and handing over power. Handing over power and the thought process and the culture of automatically thinking I'm going to hand over power, responsibility for this to somewhere else. And large parts of people's expenditure and money and life energy goes to these bodies. And the people who wield power, the organisations who wield power based around this reality are more and more proving to be very malevolent. They're not representative of your true wishes and desires. Many of them are fraudulent, and they do not have your best interests at heart. So that being the case, the real shift, the real socio-economic innovation is in our own behaviour. And that behaviour is what will deliver us and the things and people we care about to a new state of being. Now, all the components generally are there. First and foremost, us. Okay? Thoughts, feelings, desires. And let's face it, many of us live lives where the things we desire appear to be out of our reach because of these factors, because of the limits that have been either placed upon us through things we had no real control over, but also things that we've basically come to accept, which aren't true. So it's an exciting time, and it's a time that will, on a far wider scale and a very, very measurable, in a very, very measurable way, the evidence for it will be very, very clear and is becoming clear. Is of great change, of great social progress. I enjoy being a part of it. I look forward to continue being a part of it. And, as I say to myself and continue to practice or focus on a ongoing basis, on a daily level, it's all about you. And I would urge you to have that same approach and view. And we've talked about the hashtag and the strapline. So if you are on social and you're using those platforms, do apply that. Do use it and apply your thoughts in and around how you use it when you tweet or when you're blogging, whatever the case may be. So that's been a real pleasure coming to you from the engine room. It's been Emile Miabata, and this is Nuts and Bolts, and I'll be with you again very shortly to discuss other factors and things that are essential to us. But I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks.